The story begins with a massively popular virtual reality game called Newgate. However, things take a deadly turn when players realize they can't log out. And dying in the game means dying in real life. The only way to escape is by clearing the game. We meet Shayna, a determined player aiming to reach the end. As he challenges the final boss, his NPC companions warn him to be careful. During an intense battle, Shayna manages to cut off the boss's wing, but it regenerates. He speeds up his attacks, brings the boss's HP down, and lands a finishing blow. He receives several titles, and the game announces that the final boss has been defeated. Players are now free to log out. As Shayna checks the status of remaining players, he realizes he's the last one still online. But just as he prepares to log out, a mysterious gate opens. Confused, since there were no more in-game events, he steps through, only to wake up in a realistic field outside. Everything feels too real to be virtual. When he checks his stats, they've increased thanks to the boss battle, but the logout option is gone, and he has no internet connection. He wonders how the game is still functioning. Trying to return home using a tracking item, he spots a city that didn't exist in the game before. Near his in-game house, he sees a girl being dragged out of a protective barrier by some thugs. A monster appears, scaring them off, and Shayna saves the girl. Inside the house, she introduces herself as Tiara and thanks him for saving her. She assumes he's a friend of her master, Shay, but Shayna doesn't know who that is, until Tiara mentions that Shay often talks about him from the Moon Sanctuary. This surprises Shayna, because Shay was one of his support characters. Sensing her suspicion, he pretends they're old friends and asks where Shay is. Tiara won't say, but offers to deliver a message for 1,000 jewels. Shayna instead shows her a single Gale coin, which confuses her. She asks if he used an item box, something only kings can use, and is shocked by the coin's value, worth 10 billion jewels. To her, it's an enchanted treasure, but to Shayna, it was the lowest currency in the game. Curious, she asks who he really is. Shayna says he's a high human, only to learn that such beings vanished 500 years ago during the dusk of prosperity. Tiara is amazed he doesn't know this major historical event. Realizing she's referring to the mass logout, he figures out he's been transported 500 years into the future within the game world. He thanks her for the info and gives her the Gale as a token of gratitude. Since she's an elf, he thinks it'll help her, but she wonders how he knows her race. Shayna explains that Shay had cast an illusion on her. Tiara reveals the truth. Black-haired elves are seen as bad omens, so she was exiled and frequently attacked by monsters. Shay had changed her appearance and brought her to this house for safety, where she's lived in hiding for 100 years. Shayna analyzes her and discovers she's under a random curse. Using his purification ability, he removes part of it, restoring some of her silver hair. Overcome with emotion, she cries, and they test the barrier. They're no longer attacked outside. Tiara cries in joy at her newfound freedom. Back at the Moon Sanctuary, Tiara explains Shay will return soon. As a thank you, she gives Shayna a letter of recommendation, allowing him access to cities and major places. Shayna is surprised but grateful. She promises to contact him when Shay returns, and Shayna sets off for the city of Bari. At the gate, a guard is amazed by the letter. It allows entry to all kingdoms and even grants an audience with kings. He escorts Shayna to the Adventurers Guild, where Shayna tries to register. The receptionist tells him registration is on the first floor. There, he meets her twin sister Celia, while the first was Celica. As he waits for his guild card, Celica offers him food. After verifying his recommendation letter, Shayna meets the guild master, Barlu, who places another letter beside Shayna's. They resonate, confirming authenticity. Barlu warns him that letters of recommendation are powerful and dangerous if stolen. Shayna promises to protect it, especially since Tiara entrusted it to him. Barlu notes that they're both recognized by the Moon Sanctuary. The next day, Celica notices Shayna's new, simpler clothes. She hands him his adventurer card and explains the ranking system. It starts from G and goes up to SS. For now, he can only accept missions 2 ranks above his level. He chooses an herb collecting quest and leaves, while Celia thinks there's something different about him. In the forest, Sheena is frustrated. The quest was supposed to be beginner level. Then, his radar alerts him to an enemy. Investigating, he finds a level 359 undead, skull-faced Jack near a wrecked carriage. Despite the threat, Sheena attacks. His normal strikes aren't effective, and his sword starts breaking. Left with no choice, he unleashes his limit, destroying the enemy in one strike. He's disappointed he couldn't keep the enemy's glowing sword, which flies off into the distance. As a consolation, he takes a gemstone dropped by the enemy. Meanwhile, the sword crashes into a castle, confusing the guards. They decide to call an appraiser. Watching this unfold is second Princess Ryan, who wants to find out who threw the sword, suspecting the culprit must be incredibly strong. As Shenya walks through the city, he sees wounded soldiers. A guard tells him that a group of 12 was attacked by a skullface, and only 4 survived. Shenya realizes the destroyed carriage he found earlier must have belonged to them. The guard also mentions a mysterious sword that was thrown into the castle, and Shenya starts to feel guilty for causing a commotion. Back at the guild, Salika notices that a group of adventurers is gathering to take down the skullface. But Shenya casually reveals that he already defeated it and shows her the gemstone it dropped, leaving her in shock. She yells that it's impossible for one person to take down a skullface, then turns red, embarrassed by how close she got to him. Suddenly, Selika's co-worker Alice appears, and Selika tells her about Shenya defeating the skullface Jack. Shenya admits he doesn't have proof, as the monster's equipment wasn't impressive enough for him to take. Alice finds that odd, explaining that even rank B gear can fetch a good price. She then suggests having the gemstone analyzed, since it should contain the monster's mana. Curious, Shenya asks about how often skullfaces appear. Alice explains that in the northern forests, the remains of fallen adventurers can combine with mana, forming the perfect conditions for undead monsters. But since there isn't much mana in that area, skullfaces shouldn't be that strong. Shenya then shocks them by revealing that the one he fought was level 359. Salika runs off to analyze the gem, while Alice warns that someone who can defeat such a monster is even stronger than a typical rank A team, but she agrees to keep it secret at his request. Later, Shenya goes to a restaurant. Since it's crowded, he's told he'll need to share a table. A man wielding a legendary spear named Venom joins him. He introduces himself as Avis, assumes Shenya is new, but quickly realizes he's no ordinary rookie. Shenya says it's his 3rd day in town and claims to be from the countryside. Avis understands now why Shenya isn't intimidated. He doesn't know who he is. He's known as the vampire due to his undead hunting skills, though Shenya jokes it's probably because he looks pale. Avis laughs and explains it's actually because of his spear, which can drain life energy. As they eat together, Celia brings their food. Afterward, Shenya visits the library to research the collapse of civilization 500 years ago, but he finds little information. Meanwhile, Guildmaster Barlu is discussing the Skullface incident with others. They wonder why someone would defeat a Jack-class monster and leave its gear behind. Alice guesses it's because the person didn't find it valuable. They also note that on the day the Skullface was defeated, a sword was thrown into the castle, possibly by the same person. When Aldi, a night guard, describes the sword, 2 meters long, made of enchanted magical steel with light element, Barlu is shocked. That kind of weapon is as powerful as a national treasure. Aldi says they can't ignore whoever wielded it. Elsewhere, Shenya eats a skewer in the plaza when he notices a girl staring at him. He offers her food and realizes she doesn't look like a beggar. She introduces herself as Millie, a tiger-type beastkin, and thanks him. Avis suddenly shows up again and explains that Millie is an orphan from the church who often runs off, and he always ends up finding her. As Shenya prepares to go home, Millie whispers something to him, a request to rescue a fox in the forest. He decides to help, thinking it'll be a good way to pass time until Shay returns. But first, he remembers he hasn't left his message for Tiara. So, he visits the Moon Sanctuary and asks her to show Shay his sword, explaining that only he and Shay, or someone they designate, can use it. Tiara is shocked by how powerful and ancient the weapon is, and admits it scares her. Shenya guesses it's because of the materials and legendary monsters he used to forge it. She questions why he always talks about legendary beasts. He then gives her a set of magic letters that can reach anyone as long as you write their name and say, "Send." She asks why he doesn't send the letter directly to Shay. He explains that he tried, but it didn't work, likely because he hasn't met Shay in this timeline yet. They test it, and it works when sending to Tiara, confirming his theory. Tiara, excited to study the magic item, asks for more letters, hoping to become a mage. He agrees and gives her several more before heading out. Shenya then travels to the northern forest to look for the fox. After wandering for a while, he discovers a shrine and suddenly senses something unusual. Inside, he finds a small fox, poisoned and cursed. He quickly cures it, but this triggers an ambush. An army of skeletons rises from the ground. Shenya summons his spear and wipes them out. However, 2 statues in the shrine break, releasing 2 level 674 demons he's never seen before. They attack, and though Shenya dodges, they release a dark mist to blind him. Still under attack, the fox shows him a magical circle where the mist doesn't reach. He steps into it, regains control, and uses his binding bow skill to defeat the monsters. As the mist clears, the fox jumps into his arms. Shenya checks its status and realizes it's an elemental, one of the most powerful monster types in the game. He's never seen a baby version before, but when he asks if it wants to come with him, it eagerly jumps on his head. He's surprised that it understands him and realizes some game rules are different now. Meanwhile, Shay receives Tiara's letter and is surprised she has such a rare magic item. Even more surprised when she reads the contents and finds out it came from Shenya, her master. Shenya decides to keep the elemental a secret from the guild and suggests forming a pact with it. This pact hides the monster's level and race so it won't draw attention. The fox agrees, and a magical symbol appears on both of them. He names her Yuzuha, and she seems to like it. Just then, he receives a new letter from Tiara, who tells him Shay is back and waiting for his reply. Excited, Shenya heads to the guild to report the undead army he encountered in the forest. While checking the job board, he notices a request at the orphanage near the church. It's a special job without a rank, which makes him curious. Shenya remembers that Millie lives at the orphanage, so he decides to visit her and accepts the job. When he arrives at the church, a woman named Tria greets him and confirms he came for the job. He also mentions Millie, and they go to a room where he meets her. Millie excitedly hugs him, and Tria notes it's been a long time since Millie has gotten attached to someone like this. Shenya asks if the fox is the one Millie mentioned, and she happily confirms. He tells Yuzuha that Millie was the reason he could rescue her, so the fox thanks Millie too. Shenya then asks Tria about the job request. She explains it involves finding a skill successor, which surprises Shenya. Skills are apparently rare now. She's looking for someone to teach the purification skill. Shenya shocks her by saying he can teach it, but he has conditions. He wants to know about Millie's powers and get any useful information from the church, as he's trying to understand the world better. Tria is hesitant, but Millie reassures her, and she accepts the terms. Tria reveals that Millie has the title Star Composer, meaning she has infallible visions of the future. Shenya realizes this is a powerful and rare ability, and Tria assures him they've kept it secret. She also mentions that an adventurer who was once an orphan, clearly referring to Avis, helps protect the place, and his fearsome reputation keeps the children safe. Shenya is ready to start teaching, but Tria says the student isn't Millie. It's Rashia, the granddaughter of the former priest. If Rashia inherits the church, it would be easier to keep the orphanage running. Meanwhile, Yuzuha plays with the other kids, stealing their attention. Shenya wonders why Millie isn't playing too, but she says she can't compete with the older children. However, when Yuzuha returns to him, Millie happily takes the chance to be close to her, and Shenya realizes she planned that. A nun suddenly appears and asks if he's the one meant to save them. She looks upset and explains that the orphanage is in danger of being shut down because there's currently no priest. The man sent to replace the position wants to close the orphanage for profit. Later, Tria introduces Rashia to Shenya. Rashia is a bit clumsy but clearly determined. Suddenly, Avis shows up, demanding to know who took the job. He relaxes when Millie assures him Shenya can be trusted, guessing that she had a vision. When he hears about the purification skill, Shenya explains that Rashia can acquire it by defeating 200 undead monsters above level 150, while holding a sacred orb. Though it sounds daunting, he says he'll weaken the monsters and has the required orb, making it manageable. Rashia, though shocked, promises to try her best. Avis decides to go with them, realizing Shenya isn't a normal adventurer. He later invites Shenya for a drink and asks if he's a chosen one, someone with special knowledge or powers. Shenya isn't sure, but asks if it's like remembering a past life. Avis explains it's more like having knowledge of rare items and monsters, so Shenya concludes he might not be one. Still, he thinks Avis is a kind person who protects the orphanage, despite his gruff exterior. Suddenly, Shenya receives a message from Tiara saying that Shay will return soon. She's surprised by how much Shay asked about him. Then, Shenya receives another notification, his letter of recommendation. Avis is shocked and reveals that he has one too. Shenya is stunned to discover they have that in common. The next day, Shenya, Avis, and Rashia head to the Ghost Plains, where they fight undead monsters. Shenya traps them, Avis disables them, and Rashia finishes them off using healing magic, which is effective against undead. They continue like this until they reach a stronger barrier. Inside, stronger enemies appear, and Rashia keeps landing the final blow, gaining experience. Shenya explains she'll reach level 150 and unlock purification after this. Meanwhile, on the other side of the plains, Shay defeats a skull-faced Jack using her new sword. She then saves a struggling group of soldiers, healing them and shattering the monster's core. The commander is amazed. His entire squad couldn't handle the monster, but Shay took it down alone. He suspects she once fought alongside the High Humans. Shay sets off to check for more monsters and tells them they can contact her using the items she gave them. Then she rushes off, eager to meet her master again. Back with Rashia, she defeats another skull-faced Jack with Shenya's and Avis's help. A golden light surrounds her, signaling the successful acquisition of the purification skill. Her mind is instantly filled with knowledge about how to use it. Shenya congratulates her, and Rashia realizes she now has the power to save the orphanage. After resting, Shenya suggests they leave the area, but Yuzuha suddenly senses something strange. Shenya looks up and notices something unusual in the sky, making Avis uneasy. However, Rashia thinks it's beautiful. Avis explains that it's magical energy from the undead. When they're defeated, their essence gathers into a single mass in the sky. That mass soon forms into a giant skull-faced Jack. They quickly realize it's a skull-faced lord, a monster at level 804, strong enough to destroy a nation. Shenya doubts the barrier will hold. Suddenly, the creature jumps and shatters the barrier with a single punch, shocking everyone. Rashia collapses in fear. They try to retreat, but the Lord lets out a deafening roar, summoning an army of undead to block their escape. Avis considers forcing their way through, but Shenya's demeanor changes. He decides to stay behind and fight. Avis tries to stop him, but Shenya removes his limiter and urges them to return to the city. Understanding the gravity, Avis leaves with Rashia after Shenya enhances him with a physical buff. Shenya then summons his sword as Yuzuha uses fire to fight off the undead. The Skull Lord keeps summoning more, so Shenya unleashes a massive attack, creating a huge crater. Elsewhere, Shay senses the explosion and heads toward it. Checking her map, she sees Shenya is surrounded. Suddenly, a blue marker appears, an ally. Realizing it's Shay, Shenya leaps over to meet her. Yuzuha puts up a barrier so they can talk briefly. Shay jumps into his arms, emotional, and he says he's back. As she cries, they agree to deal with the Skull Lord first. Using a combined spell, they quickly eliminate the weaker undead and damage the Lord. Shenya summons another sword and delivers the final blow. As the monster dies, it begs for power, leaving Shenya shocked that it could speak. He recovers the orb and says they should finish their conversation. He reveals that after defeating the dungeon boss and freeing everyone, a portal sent him 500 years into the future. Shay explains that she and the other support characters didn't disappear after the game ended. They waited. However, chaos spread across the continent, and the group split up to help where they could. Shay eventually returned to the Moon Sanctuary. Shay is happy to be reunited with him, but Shenya asks her to stop calling him Master, since she's now a legend. It would draw too much attention. Embarrassed, she agrees to call him by name, but they both blush. Shay asks what he plans to do next, and he shares his goal to visit a sacred place and look for a way to return home. Shay has been there but couldn't explore much. Morning arrives, and they return to the sanctuary to celebrate their reunion. Shinya notices Yuzuha has 3 tails now and is shocked when she suddenly starts talking. She explains that her speech ability returned after the Skull Lord's defeat. Shinya thinks it's because it was a boss fight. He asks her to hide her abilities in public, so she merges her tails into one and agrees to behave. Shay finds her adorable and pets her. Remembering Avis and Rashia, Shinya rushes to catch up. Avis senses someone approaching and prepares to fight, but relaxes when it turns out to be Shinya. Rashia faints from fear again. Meanwhile, Ryan arrives at the battle site and is amazed at the devastation. A soldier named Godas shows her a blade found in the ravine. It bears the falcon emblem and still radiates power. He explains that only the legendary Iban blacksmith from the High Humans could have made such a sword. Ryan is shocked, as High Humans are supposed to be extinct. Godas isn't sure, but whoever forged this weapon must be incredibly powerful. Ryan recalls that the blacksmith is tied to the Moon Sanctuary and suggests they visit. Godas nervously asks what she'd do if the blacksmith is still alive. She jokes about dueling or marrying him, leaving Godas worried. Back in the city, Avis demands an explanation from Shinya about his connection to Shay. Shinya tries to play it down, saying Shay defeated the boss, but Avis doesn't buy it and attacks to get the truth. Forced to come clean, Shinya reveals he's a High Human. Shay confirms this, calling him her master. Avis notes that High Humans are immensely powerful and skilled. Some even worship them as gods. Shinya reveals he's a blacksmith and offers to upgrade Avis's spear, but Avis refuses to let him touch it. Rashia wakes up and is shocked to see Shay. They all head back to the city, and at the gate, Shinya wonders if it's time to say goodbye. Avis reminds him he already completed the task of teaching purification to Rashia. Still, Shinya gives him a message card in case he needs help. Avis tries to decline, but Shinya insists. He doesn't want to lose the first friend he made in this city. Avis accepts. Shinya and Shay then head to the Moon Sanctuary. Tiara sees them and is surprised they arrive together. She asks if he's staying for dinner, and Shay happily says yes, revealing that Shinya is the owner of the sanctuary. Tiara panics, realizing she hadn't taken him seriously when he claimed to be a High Human. Now she knows he's her boss and apologizes for treating him casually. Shinya assures her he prefers a relaxed environment. At dinner, Shinya is impressed with the food, and Tiara is shocked by the ingredients he provided. They're incredibly rare, and most wouldn't dream of using them for cooking. Shay explains the food glows because of leftover mana or life force from powerful monsters and rare plants. They enjoy the meal, and Shinya learns that the other support characters are living their lives well. Suddenly, Tiara interrupts, clearly drunk, so Shay puts her to bed. Shinya chuckles and heads to his room, finding it unchanged. Yuzuha is asleep in his bed, and he lies down. Later, he wakes to find Shay sleeping beside him, clinging to him and crying in her sleep. He quietly apologizes for leaving her. In the morning, he's startled to find Yuzuha has taken on a human form and is hugging him. He creates clothes for her, and she struggles to put them on, but thanks him. At breakfast, they listen to Yuzuha's story. She tried to stop the cataclysm 500 years ago, but was gravely wounded. The sanctuary dulled the pain, but she nearly died. Shinya found her just in time, thanks to Millie. Yuzuha wants to thank her again. Shay suggests making an elven treat from Tiara's shop as a gift. It's one of their best-selling items. Shaya remarks that the Moon Sanctuary shouldn't really be known for food, but Shay explains that they haven't been able to restock weapons because only Shinya can access the armory. Shinya agrees to craft new blades later. Shay then changes the subject and suggests they meet Gerard. Shinya is shocked to hear he's still alive. High beasts typically only live about 150 years, and it's been 500 years since he last saw him. Shay explains that Gerard has been waiting all this time. He was the first Beast King, uniting the various beast tribes. Now, the 8th king is on the throne and said to be a good ruler, so Gerard must be doing fine. Shaya is eager to meet him and plans to leave the next day. Tiara volunteers to watch over the shop, but Shay insists she come with them. Now that Shinya is back, the shop can be moved anywhere. Tiara is excited by the idea, and Shinya says they should gather supplies for the journey. Shinya decides to find a quest along the way to Fared to rank up. He also wants to forge more weapons and restock inventory. Shay proposes creating a party so they can use voice chat, now known as telepathy. She also suggests Tiara register as an adventurer. Shinya opens the forge and warns Yua not to touch anything, as some items are cursed. He begins crafting, but his first blade is far above the quality of what's available in local shops, so he downgrades the quality and fills the inventory. Tiara changes into adventurer attire and is ready to go. When Shinya stares at her, she jokingly punishes him by making him carry all the shopping bags. Tiara is amazed by the bustling market and pulls him around excitedly. Shinya reminds her she doesn't know where the guild is, so he leads the way, and she blushes when he holds her hand. At the guild, Shinya's rank is upgraded to E. Celia says his report about the Skullface and the undead army was verified, but rank-ups are limited gradually. She asks about his relationship with Tiara. He explains they're traveling together, but Celia teases them, thinking they're a couple. Shinya changes the subject and asks for information about the Holy Land, destroyed during the Dusk of Prosperity. Celia tells him only adventurers of rank C or higher can access that information. He decides to ask again after leveling up. She recommends a quest escorting a carriage to a transit point called Bayonne, with departure at noon. After leaving the guild, Tiara says they still have time, so Shinya suggests walking around the city. They decide to visit the church. There, Shaya greets Rashia, and Tiara introduces herself. Rashia is excited to hear she's from the Moon Sanctuary, and asks how she became Shay's disciple, clearly a huge fan of Shay. Inside, Millie hugs Yuzuha and Shinya. Rashia shares that she's been named the next high priest, and they thank Shinya for everything. He asks about Avis, and they say he went to investigate the rogue priest. Shinya thinks it makes sense and gives them a bracelet and a necklace he made for Millie. After saying goodbye, they head to get Tiara's adventurer card. Salika hands it over, and Shinya decides it's time to take the Moon Sanctuary with them. Tiara thinks it's strange to take a house along, but Shinya says it's normal for him. In an alley, he shows her a crystal imbued with a one-time teleportation spell. Tiara is amazed. Teleportation is a lost magic, but Shinya says he can make more with the right materials because he's a legendary high human. They use the crystal, and Tiara is stunned by the teleportation magic. Shinya then stores the Moon Sanctuary using a command and shows her a necklace that holds its portable form. She's fascinated. They leave for the quest location and meet an adventurer named Gain. Another adventurer, Tsubaki, arrives too. They'll be working together. The dwarf merchant Nek introduces himself and says he's counting on them to protect his caravan on the journey to Bayonne. Meanwhile, in the royal castle, the king is informed that the Moon Sanctuary has vanished. He's concerned because the structure predates the Dusk of Prosperity and is made of lost technology. He believes the situation could affect the entire kingdom. They mention Shay is approaching the capital and should arrive in a day. The princess advises caution, especially since Ryan hasn't returned yet. The king reluctantly agrees. Back on the road, Shinya suggests getting to know each other's abilities. Gain says he's an A-rank samurai but can't use magic. Tsubaki is a B-rank brawler with speed-enhancing support magic. Tiara shares that she's a new adventurer and an alchemist, but she can also use a sword, bow, and light healing spells. Shinya reveals he's also a samurai and can use a bit of fire and lightning magic. He introduces Yua, explaining she's a monster under a tamer contract. Gain is impressed. It's rare for a samurai to use magic or be liked by monsters. Tsubaki is surprised he's not from Hoto, where most samurai come from. In the kingdom, knights and warriors are more common, and choosing the samurai class is considered unusual. Shinya defends the class, but Tsubaki says it's too much work since a samurai has to train as both a knight and a berserker. Gain explains that Hanamoto is an island that formed due to tectonic shifts and now houses many samurai guilds. Fighters idolize samurai there. He mentions a few guilds, and Shinya is stunned to hear that guilds from 500 years ago have now become a nation. Suddenly, the carriage halts as a group of bandits appears, blocking the road. Shinya tells Yuzuha to protect Nak and stay hidden in the carriage while the rest of them prepare for battle. Tiara feels anxious. This is the first time she might have to kill someone. The bandits underestimate them and start making crude remarks about Tsubaki, especially demanding they hand her over for their amusement. Their taunts infuriate Shinya, and Tiara senses a dangerous, murderous aura from him, silently hoping he calms down. Realizing the danger, she steels herself and prepares to shoot. The bandits appear to be mostly low-ranked, but Gain deduces they had an informant feeding them information. Suddenly, an arrow from an unknown source kills a hidden bandit, triggering the others to attack. Tsubaki uses her speed-boosting magic to defeat one. Gain slices clean through another's weapon, and Shinya swiftly takes out two at once. Their strength shocks the bandit leader, who realizes they're no ordinary E-rank adventurers. When Shinya destroys the bandit's weapon, the man sees the deadly look in his eyes. Beaten and terrified, the bandit is forced to surrender, but Shinya demands to know who tipped them off. Tiara quickly grabs Shinya, trying to bring him back to his senses. Tsubaki is confused, and Shinya wonders what she's doing, but Tiara blushes as she realizes she instinctively mimicked what Shay used to do to calm her down when she was little. Shinya returns to normal, and the group continues their journey.